Hello and welcome to the Spooky Screen. We are five best friends who get together and talk about movies, film, and other comings and goings of the industry and general media news. If you've been following us for a while, you know that we've kind of switched our format a bit up to go less from review based, more to discussion based, because discussions are more fun, to be honest. I'm Noah. With me are my three other hosts. I like to introduce them. This is Steven, David, and Nick.
Hey, everyone.
Johnny is usually joining us, but he is on a much needed vacation with his family. Johnny and Joy, we do miss you.
Slacker.
He just didn't want to watch The Idol.
Yeah. Tonight we will be discussing The Idol, everyone's favorite. We like to call it the industry's darling at the moment. We'll be talking about the box office and how it's sadly underperforming. And Steven and I will be reviewing Spiderverse Past Lives in the Flash. So we got a lot on the agenda, so let's get started with The Idol. Episode 3 is out. What'd you guys think? I know Nick's not watching it. Johnny's on vacation, so that just leaves me, Steven, and David. What'd you guys think of the third episode?
Yeah.
Are you still digging it? Are you starting to see the criticisms? What's going on? Steven, why don't you start?
Oh, okay. I'll start. Well,
why don't you give a quick synopsis, like one sentence of what happens?
Yeah, episode 3, we find Tedros really rooting himself into Jocelyn's life. Sorry about that. Jocelyn's life even further by trying to take over her entire music operation, and is tasked with producing 3 hits for the studio ahead of a 2-week deadline.
You're getting way too detailed.
That's it. that's pretty much
the season's been ruined.
I guess if we're not spoiling it, right?
Right. I don't want to spoil it. He gets more involved in her life, and they are tasked with coming up with 3 hit pop songs.
And he helps her make new, better music. Let's just say.
By under unconventional methods.
Very unconventional method. Yes. Great. What'd you think of it?
I still liked it.
Yeah.
I don't know what to say. Like,
do you feel dirty though? Do you feel like you're afraid to like it?
I've seen plenty of just, if the show's trying to be sexy, it's failing, right? It's not sexy, and I think the actors, the creators are in on the joke. And I read a couple of interviews by them, and sometimes they're trying to be provocateurs or contrarians against what the media is saying about the show. But I think it's funny. I don't think it's trying to be sexy or purposeful or meaningful to such a ambitious level. I think it's fun to watch, and it's a bit mindless, and for a deep callback to our movie review days, this is one of those shows where you could just kind of flip the switch off in your brain and just kind of enjoy it as it goes on. It's a bit escapist, right? You're going on shopping sprees on Rodeo Drive in Los Angeles. You're tableside sharing deep, dark secrets about your life with people that you've just met, and and discovering unconventional ways to make pop hits for a very demanding studio with your new cult leader boyfriend, who has the same first last name
with a rat tail.
Tedros. Yeah, it's fun for me, honestly. This isn't going to shift the medium, but it never set out to do something like that, and that's fine, and that's okay.
It almost feels like a pilot to me. It's like a pilot for a really long pilot to see if HBO wants to invest a lot of money into it. Yeah. David, what do you think? Let me hear. You're the one that fell asleep in episode 2. You finally got through it.
Yeah, I foolishly put it on the second episode on at like 1 or 2 in the morning, and like got like 5 minutes into it.
Why watch anything purposefully like to absorb at 1 a.m.?
Nothing good happens at 2 a.m.
I don't know.
In the morning, dude.
That's true.
Especially not anything on the Idol.
All right, so I was intrigued, but unimpressed with the first episode. But when I gave the second episode a shot, because I knew we were going to talk about it this week, I was pleasantly surprised. And the funny thing was they throw up this like disclaimer about like nudity and sex and all this stuff. And to my surprise, by the end of the episode, I was like, that was it? Like, that was the hullabaloo that everybody was getting, you know, their underwear in a twist about?
Yeah, the words they used was outrageous sex scene, I believe.
Yeah, it was like X-rated and stuff like that. So
maybe you're just a heathen.
Maybe.
Depraved David.
But, you know, I think the developing story is intriguing about this kind of girl who's trying to survive the machine and wanting to have integrity while kind of like what we touched on last week, while dealing with these big emotions. Like, she's a young girl. She's been in the industry for, she said, 10 years, and she was discovered at 11. So she's 21 years old. She's dealing with the death of a parent and a failing career. I think it's really interesting. And I think I think everything is very interesting. And like you said, no, it's almost like a pilot for something more. If we weren't going to talk about it in more episodes and like, you know, every week, I'd probably stop watching it. And that's just personal. Like, this is not the type of show that I seek out, that I would be like, oh, that's interesting to me, I'm going to watch it. But I do see the merit in it. Like, everyone is like bashing on the acting and stuff like that, and I definitely wrote all of the side characters off as like cringy and like icky, like last week. And like you guys said, like in the second episode, they start to show their true integrity or their true like desires for, you know, like what they have, the stakes that they have in Jocelyn's career. And I thought that was interesting. And I think there's like some, like the story itself is interesting. Like, young ingenue pop idol, down on her luck, grieving, gets entangled with a manipulator who is seemingly just like a collector of talent and breaks people to the point where he's just able to manipulate them in any way that he can. Like, he has no real talent almost of himself. He just lives off other people's talent.
It's a classic Hollywood story.
Right. Which is interesting. What I was going to say is my one criticism, and Steven, you were hinting about this, about like the 6-episode run. I think if they had like maybe just 2 more episodes, like 8 episodes, they could have eased us into this relationship.
This is a classic David move.
Yeah, but like I think
by 2 episodes.
I personally love build-up. I love tension. I love when I feel uneasy and I can atmosphere where you can sit in that feeling and like
David,
be uncomfortable. Yes,
I'm telling you this right now. Any showrunner would love to have you as their media executive.
I really digged the 3rd episode, and I'm really digging the series overall. And I feel like it is a honeypot. Do you know what a honeypot is? It's when you lure people in thinking it's something else in terms of sugary sweetness, and when they get in there, it's not what they expected because it was a trap, and they're pissed off. And that's what it feels like to me. Like, The Weeknd is 100%. Sorry, Tedros is 100% supposed to be cringy and embarrassing. And all the sexiness that you're seeing and all the nudity you're seeing is supposed to make you feel uncomfortable. It's not supposed to be sexy. It's not supposed to be romantic. That's the whole point of the show to me, is that I don't want to get on a soapbox, but like if you watch a music video of a female singer, they're most likely showing off their butt cheeks, right? It's kind of taking that and making it seem like that's what this show is, but at the same time having a heavy criticism of that. But it's never showing its hand that it is a criticism of that. And that's why I like the show so much.
Do you think the show's garnering the reaction it wants because like that's what it's trying to do to people? Like in this,
I think so.
Because
I think so.
if any, because like it's the idea that if a woman is going to do something, you know, she should be empowered to do it herself. But the idea of a man taking advantage of a woman for fame, people would scoff and say that's like, oh, that's disgusting. Because I mean, obviously it is. But to even see it on TV, the fact that people, I guess, can't separate the reality from the television show, people are still having such extreme emotions. And like, do you think like the show's going for that to be like, see, like, look, like you can't even enjoy this for what it is?
That's what the show's doing, which I like. It's taking that, pretending to be that, but then turning it upside on its head. And I really liked the whole. I love the whole the age. Like you have this duality of her agents versus this guy that's now in her life, and I like the setup they're doing of how they're almost like warring over her soul. They had a scene where she's in the middle, sitting on a table, and then the agents are on one side, or like her manager is on one side, and Tedros is on the other side.
That was one of the best scenes, yeah.
Yeah, and I really liked that so much. And I liked the dinner party scene. I just liked it. I feel like it's really interesting, and it's surprising me, which I find enjoyable in TV shows. Let's move on before this episode becomes an idol episode.
Yeah.
Actually, let's go to WWE, Nick. I just want to full disclosure. I would say Nick's the only person of our group that watches WWE. Is it even WWE? I know there's like 5 other.
It's WWE.
Okay.
I mean,
he's going.
No,
go ahead. I was gonna say he's very excited about this. It was like a big thing happened in WWE history. Why don't you take it from there?
WWE has been criticized tons of times for not being able to tell long-term stories anymore. They would just kind of have like a week-by-week story. There was no long-term planning. It was just whatever happens tonight happens, and maybe we'll carry it to next week, or maybe we'll carry it for like 2 weeks until we get to a big event, and then boom, it's resolved, and we just move on and act like it never happened. So it was very heavily criticized, very heavily panned. So right now, the storyline is that there's a superstar named Roman Reigns. So WWE always tries to have a top star. For 20 years, it was John Cena. Recently, it's become Roman Reigns. When they tried to put Roman Reigns in this spot, it was obvious that they tried to force it down your throat. Nobody liked him.
Roman?
Say again?
Do you like Roman Reigns?
Right now, yes. Okay. Great character. So COVID happened, and he had leukemia, and because COVID happened, he was like, "Look, I'm not going to take the risks. I'm going to step away because I just don't want to get sick. I don't want anything bad to happen." And that was the last we saw of Roman Reigns. Happy-go-lucky, plucky, good guy who was always the underdog, even though he was like 6'5" and cock diesel. Like ridiculous how he's the underdog.
Cock diesel?
You know what it means.
He's just
cock diesel.
Yeah, it means he's huge, he's ripped, and he's cut, and like somehow he was the underdog.
Use that phrase more often.
Sure, Jan.
So Roman Reigns randomly came back as a bad guy for the first time. Really, we got to see him as a bad guy. He came back during the pandemic and won the championship, and has been holding on to that championship for over 1,000 days. Which doesn't sound like much because everyone's like, oh, well, it's scripted. Who cares? No big deal. But this has been some of the best storytelling that I have seen on wrestling and I don't want to say on TV in general. That's ridiculous. But in wrestling, it's the greatest storytelling I've seen in a long time. The story for Roman Reigns is that he came in and his slogan was beat everyone and leave. He came in, he beat 2 former champions and became the champion himself. Then he started creating this faction called the Bloodline, where he took his 2 real-life cousins in order to become the champion and be a dominant force. He had his one cousin, Jey Uso, that he really beat into submission. And the story has just been about how... And now his cousin has like Stockholm Syndrome, where he's just been manipulated, gaslighted. And he sticks by Roman strictly because Roman's told him, like, you've got nothing else. I'm in charge. I provide for the family. You need to serve me. Long story short, there was they built themselves up to be the most dominant force over the course of like a year and a half. Finally, his brother had enough and said, I'm tired of seeing you go through this. And they attacked Roman Reigns, the head of the table, the tribal chief, the top dog. It's like a Theon Greyjoy story where he was all big, tough, fantastic. Then he just got cut down, week after week, month after month, just utterly destroyed and turned into nothing. It has been fantastic. It has been such a wild ride. And this has been 3 consistent years of long-term storytelling. I just wanted to bring that up as an example of when long-term pays off. If you just stick with what's necessary, they didn't go out of control. They didn't drop things. They just kept to what they knew. And that was the most interesting thing. The ratings were going up because of it. Kudos to them. They did fantastic. Kudos to Jay Uso.
Steven, you wanted to... Steven saw... Is it Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse? What is it? Enter the Spider-Verse. Across the Spider-Verse.
Into was the first one.
Yes, you saw that one. What did you think of it?
Like is not a strong enough word. I love this movie. This is a true work of art. This is the movie where a studio spends $200 million and deserves to make $2 billion off of it because of just the sheer amount of talent, creativity, love, joy, just all the great things about filmmaking that you hear about kind of shining through the storytelling, the visuals, the characters. Everything about this film is so well done that I just left the theater feeling so satisfied about the viewing experience. Funny story, there was a mother of two sitting right next to me, and we were just joking. We were talking before the movie began. She's like, "Oh, I'm just here for my two boys. I'm probably just gonna fall asleep. You can nudge me if I start snoring." I'm like, "No, it's okay." Like we were just like joking about that. But what happened was there was a character in the movie played by Issa Rae that looked just like this woman, and she's like, "That's me," and she got really into the movie and just started to laugh at all the jokes and stayed awake for the whole thing. And it's not a spoiler to say the movie ends on a cliffhanger because the original title of this film is Part 1. So she was totally hooked by it. And I think this is just like a testament to the strength of this movie to be able to latch on to such a wide audience and entertain them and just make them just kind of really enjoy the experience of being there and being present and watching this film with an audience. There's just so much going on in this film, and yet it's so beautiful to look at, and it's so well told. The voice acting is god tier on this movie. These animated characters felt like they were becoming real individuals on the screen, and I just... The best thing about this movie, and I'll end on this note, is that this movie, in an age where we've just been crammed full with superhero content, TV shows and movies, it does something new with the whole idea of a superhero film. And I won't ruin what that is, but it basically takes the concept of the superhero film and starts to deconstruct it, poke fun at it. So yeah, I love Spider-Verse. I highly recommend seeing it in theaters because it's truly like seeing a work of art, a painting on the wall in a museum. It's so beautiful to look at.
Steven, I'm going to challenge you.
Mm-hmm.
From someone that is incredibly fatigued from superhero movies, burnt out, even Spider-Man movies, because it feels like we've gotten 18 Spider-Man movies just in the past year alone. What would you say to that person that's like, this movie might be good, but I don't know if I don't think I have another superhero movie in me. What would you say to that person?
That's tough because I would tell them to be careful because this is another superhero movie. You can't get around that fact. But I think the thing that stands out for the Spider-Verse movie is that the characters themselves feel so much more realer than their superhero counterparts. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what really truly makes a superhero film great. Spider-Verse plays that same Bible in the sense that it really leans on the voice work and the characters behind the masks and tells an extremely personal story where the emotional connection develops really strong and really fast between yourself and two of the main leads, which is Gwen Stacy, Spider-Girl, and then Miles Morales.
So what I hear is it's less about the superhero and more about the person.
Yeah, it's more
about the humanity.
Yeah, it's more about the humanity. And, I will say this. I will warn that it is about, an anomaly causing a lot of damage in a world where he doesn't really belong. But it's just done so well that it feels new and fresh and exciting, in terms of taking this multiverse type environment and sort of flipping it on its head, somewhat similar to the way that Everywhere Everything All at Once did.
So you're saying it's more so, instead of it being a Spider-Man movie just so happens to star Peter Parker, or in this case Miles Morales, because he's the Spider-Man. It's a Miles Morales movie that just so happens to star Spider-Man.
Yeah, and you know what the funny thing about that is that Gwen Stacy, who's voice acted by Haley Steinfeld, the movie starts out with her, and I think why it does that is because it makes the movie's trying to make a point that it's also about Miles Morales, but it's also about this is Gwen's story as well. And there's a specific reason why they do that I don't want to spoil here, but it feels fully satisfying because they push Gwen up to Miles's level. So you now have two emotional arcs that you're tracking from start to finish in this movie, and just tremendous work in the writing.
You might have piqued my interest, Steven.
And they
Bravo.
balance it well.
I just can't imagine how much love and attention went into this to strike that perfect balance between superhero action, emotional storytelling, just incredible character development, and fun. There's twists in this movie. There's jokes. There's different art styles. It's just a solid movie.
Well, maybe I should juxtapose Spider-Man with a movie I saw about 10 minutes ago, which was The Flash. Let's talk about superhero
I don't
fatigue.
know why you do this to yourself.
I did it because my father-in-law wanted to see it.
Oh, I see. Fair enough. Yeah.
So, and I was curious. You know what? This was directed by the guy that directed It, the new It movies. And just like Spider-Verse, I could just feel the passion and the love that was put into it. And I'm being dead honest. I'm not being sarcastic. I really felt like he was trying his hardest to make the best superhero movie of all time. And it was fun and it was wacky, but it was just, you know, when like a kid presents a play and in their head it's amazing, but when they present it, it's just kind of embarrassing, and you clap, you clap at the end.
And then there's a T-Rex, and the
T-Rex, that's what it was. Like, I felt how much love. Like, he really loved his characters, he really loved his story, but it was just not executed well. There was just so much bad CGI and just questionable acting.
Did you see he
weird choices?
Added bad CGI? Like the director.
Did he say that to make up to cover his butt though?
I read an article. I'll try to find it for you and send it to you. But they said that they intentionally put bad CGI in.
Oh my god!
Give more wackiness to the movie.
I'm telling you right now,
this did not land.
This was Uncanny Valley, the movie. Like, they made CGI everyone. Like newborn baby CGI. The main character was CGI. Nicolas Cage was in this movie though, and he was fully CGI. What? Like, it was just like, why? But at the same time, you're like, the director's having so much fun, but it just isn't working. Yeah. But that was The Flash, and unfortunately it's doing really bad at the box office. I mean, it's kind of to be expected, I guess. There's just so much superhero stuff going on. Well, I'm going to end my quick review with, I'm sorry, Flash. I feel bad, but I'm not recommending it.
Don't feel bad.
Nick.
Don't feel bad.
Does anyone have anything else they want to share quickly before we end this episode?
Idol episode 4 next week. Past Lives, I'll review. Because it's releasing wide on June 23rd.
We can have more of that art versus money talk next week, David, because I know Johnny wanted to talk about it too.
Yeah, when the box offices, I think, will start to wrap up, right?
All right, well, this has been the Spooky Screen talking about a bunch of crap. Thanks for joining us. Again, like, comment, subscribe. We'll be back next week to talk about more crap. Thank you and good night.
See you, everyone.